Welcome to the Well Seasoned Librarian Podcast. This is Season 6, Episode 6. Today we're very happy to have on our program Hilary Boynton, who is a certified holistic health counselor and has received a BA in psychology from the University of Virginia and has trained at the Institute of Integrative Nutrition. This devoted mother of 5 kids has been a powerhouse behind nutritional healing and has worked for the School of Lunch program in the Los Angeles area. She has a book out, the Heal Your Gut Cookbook, Nutrient-Dense Recipes for Intestinal Health Using the GAPS Diet. I'm going to take you right to my conversation with Hilary Boynton. I had a great time talking to her, and I found it to be a very informative conversation. Here we go. Welcome to the Well Seasoned Librarian Podcast. Today, I'm very happy to be talking to Hilary Boynton, who is the author of the Heal Your Gut Cookbook and also is behind the School for Lunch. Hilary, thank you for being on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Hilary, I have so many questions for you today, and I want to thank you for being on your show. Can you tell our listeners who are not familiar with you, though, a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I am a mother of 5. I guess that is one of those big things that kind of has shaped my life. I have triplets who are 18 and then 2 more, one who's 15 and one who's almost 14. So once upon a time, I had 5 kids under 4, and now they're all in the teenage years. And I am super passionate about food as medicine and vibrant health and lifestyle, diet and lifestyle. And I, through my own health journey, sort of discovered the power of food as medicine. And over, several years of studying, I finally ended up as a lunch lady at my children's school, really passionate about getting this information and especially this nutrition, this deep nutrition into kids as young as possible and as often as possible to set them up on a trajectory of health instead of a life of, entering into the medical system. So we want to keep them out of the medical system and thriving and pursuing their dreams. So that's sort of, and I've started a company called School of Lunch, where we train lunch leaders. I realized quickly that I can't necessarily change a million schools, but I can train a million, maybe a million's ambitious, but train many, many, many lunch leaders to step into the role of understanding, not only the benefits of local, seasonal, nutritious and delicious foods, but nature connection and community and the importance of breaking bread together. And so we run this training academy every year where we teach people you don't have to aspire to be a lunch leader in a school lunch program, but you can jump into anything, whether it be your home or a restaurant or any sort of business or any way you want to use this information. So that's sort of the long and the short of it.
Nice. Good. Thank you. Now, you have a BA in psychology from the University of Virginia, and
Yes.
You are a certified holistic health counselor, and you have as well trained in the Institute of Integrative Nutrition. How did you start in this career path?
Well, I, like I mentioned, I had a healing journey, and it was really when I was in high school, I fell for the fat-free propaganda, and my mom fell for it. And I was in the 90s, and a lot of people fell for it. And I thought that was really the answer to a healthy body and to eliminate fat, and that fat would make me fat. And I was an athlete and working my body, very intensely and just not replenishing with anything real nutrient dense. And I ended up with stress fractures in both of my femurs and my tibias.
Oh.
Yeah. And never put 2 and 2 together that it could have anything to do with nutrition, and went on to play soccer in college and just again, wasn't replenishing with anything real nutrient dense. And then it wasn't until I got married at age 25 and then got pregnant at 26 and miscarried pretty immediately that I kind of was like, wow, why did that happen? And I went on to have 4 miscarriages over the next 3 years. And that was very eye-opening to me that something was off. I couldn't quite understand why my body wasn't able to hold a pregnancy. And it was super devastating, really the most devastating time of my life. Just wanted to have a baby so badly. And I ended up doing in vitro and had triplets through in vitro, and then went on to have 2 more babies naturally. So now looking back, I know stress played a huge role in my health at that point. I think stress is one of the number 1 factors in disease. And it wasn't actually until my 4th baby was born that well, he was diagnosed with, or it was apparent that he had eczema head to toe at
Oh,
age
wow.
like 2 months, and he was scratching
Oh my God.
all the time. And I had these 3 3-year-olds, and then I found out when he was my fourth baby was 6 months old, that I was pregnant with my fifth. And I was just sort of in this whole turmoil. I was probably headed towards a autoimmune disease myself. I had took like 10 seconds for my right eye to open up in the middle of the night, and I thought I had shingles. And I was just really, again, drinking coffee in the morning, eating balance bars in the day. I had all these, my body was totally depleted from having babies and being pregnant. And then I had this baby that had this eczema, and he was scratching for 2 hours in the middle of the night, and I didn't know how to help him. I tried everything from eliminating things from my diet to holistic treatments. And then I finally put him on steroid cream and Zyrtec twice a day, which I didn't want to do, but I was just desperate. And it took away his eczema so that he would sleep at night. But I quickly realized that that was like a Band-Aid, that if I didn't put the eczema cream on, it would flare again. And I was just like, this isn't really getting to the root cause. And at that point, ironically, I had come across the work of Jamie Oliver and Alice Waters around school lunches. And my kids weren't even in school yet, but I thought, wow, this is incredible what they're doing. And I was determined to try and change the school lunches for the better in my town in Massachusetts. And a woman that decided to help me out, she had already been down that path. And she said, I'll help you again. If you want to jump in, I'll jump in the ring again. And she kept mentioning the Weston A. Price Foundation to me. And I wasn't sure what that was. And I can get into that if you want, but it's about food farming and the healing arts. And
Right.
I didn't really know what it was, but she had a son who was, that she had healed of allergies and asthma with raw milk. And she said, you've got to put your child on raw milk. And I thought, what is raw milk? I'd never heard of it. But I was so desperate that I was willing to try anything. And they were part of this co-op. And so that she and her family picked up raw dairy for me weekly and dropped it off. And as soon as I got him on raw milk and cod liver oil, he was literally healed within 2 months.
Oh my God.
So really that was like, holy, you know what, like real food just healed my child, when every doctor had really said to me, he'll probably just have asthma, eczema, and allergies. They all run hand in hand. He could outgrow, but we don't know. And it was just sort of his lot in life. And I just was so amazed that he just healed. And so clearly he needed those healthy fats. And really that was the point where I just kind of took off running and wanted to shout this from the rooftops and let every mama out there know that, this was possible, that healing was possible. And that's when I went back to get a degree in health counseling, so I could have some sort of certificate so that I could feel like I could pass this information along. And I started teaching cooking classes out of my home. And that's really, I just was so passionate about it. So that's really how I got to the point where I started teaching and educating and kind of being this cheerleader of real food. And
it sounds
health.
like kind of the medical profession kind of let you down a little bit in that regard, because like you've just been giving these kind of like, did anybody ever suggest during this time, from a medical point of view, like maybe holistic stuff or something outside of the mainstream might be an okay way to go, or just always is it rote prescription pad kind of thing?
It was really, it was we went down the whole rabbit hole of allergy testing and the pricks on his back and figuring
Right.
out, and then I had to eliminate all these things from my diet, which was super stressful. And I was nursing him and trying to, so then we were, trying to be, simpatico in that way, that like whatever I was eating was clearly affecting him. And so really, no, nobody had any clear answer for me. It was really just, it wasn't until a friend of our family's who said, he was really just like he was a pediatrician and said, you have to put him on the steroid cream and the Zyrtec, like this poor child is suffering. And I felt so bad because I was really just trying to do I was trying to do the holistic route, but nothing even that way was really working. And nobody had, it was just amazing to me that just the simplicity of raw milk and cod liver oil healed
God,
him.
that's just wonderful. These are things that are not even very expensive really, or hard to get. These are things that are like have been around forever. Yeah, the doctors kind of gleaned on like they don't even think of this, or they don't even like consider it.
Yeah, and it is hard to get raw dairy. I mean, in Massachusetts, you can go to a farm and get it direct from a farm, but many states, most states, you can't go to the grocery store and purchase it. I mean, now I live in California, where we're so blessed that we have raw dairy right on the grocery store shelves,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
we're able to carry it in our school lunch program, which is such a blessing. But yeah, it's really like we had to be part of a co-op. And then when I went to my first Weston Price conference, I remember hearing Sally Fallon speak, who's the head of that foundation, and she sort of explained the work of Dr. Price. He's this dentist in the 20s and 30s who traveled all around the world and studied. He found pretty much perfect health in these little tiny tribes of people and communities that were pretty much living off the land and what they had in their immediate surroundings, and they were thriving, free of disease, and had this beautiful broad bone structure and perfectly straight teeth and no heart disease, no cancer. And it wasn't really until one generation removed that in came the white flour and the white sugar, and in came the narrowing of the jaw and the crooked teeth, and disease sets in. And so that I remember listening to her speak, right? This is the very beginning of my awakening, and I was just like, oh my gosh, this all makes so much sense. And I felt like I had been duped my whole life. Like I just, here I was at home eating fat-free and Weight Watchers desserts and things like that, thinking this was the answer. And here was this woman talking about organ meats and butter and real, eating the whole animal and going back to local farms and raw dairy and all these things that just weren't really in my wheelhouse at that point. And I walked out of her seminar, and all of a sudden the Amish were lined up there with all their beautiful farm fresh foods. And I was just blown away. And they ended up needing somebody to run a co-op in Massachusetts. And I, raised my hand. I'm like, I'll do it. And so I ended up running a co-op for 6 years out of my home. And that I really just wanted everybody to have access to these farm fresh foods, because it isn't always easy to obtain them. So, I mean, I wish it were easier. It's very, they are very basic, simple things that used to be available to everybody. So it's just, now we have to really scratch the surface, and I believe they're everywhere, but you have to scratch the surface and try and find them, and then make it a priority to support your local farmers. And that's where you're going to get the best bang for your buck.
Now, can you talk about School of Lunch and what it is?
Yeah, so School of Lunch is a company that I formed with a couple of partnerships. One is with Chuck Barth, who's the Slow Food Ventura County rep. I met him at a farmer's market. And the other is Joel Rogers, who's in television production. And the three of us kind of combined and joined forces in understanding the power of local foods and the message that I was trying to spread to get children and all people really on the right track towards eating better and making this a way of life and adopting this lifestyle. And we run a school lunch program in Topanga, California, where we feed 150 people daily. And it's all local, seasonal, farm fresh foods. We source just about everything locally, and we focus on the principles of Weston Price and nutrient density. So we have things from bone broths that we make in-house to fresh chicken liver pate, raw kefir smoothies. We make our own ferments. We have sauerkrauts and kimchi, and we make our own salad dressings. And so, but really, basically, we have these kids in this community. We have everybody's stomachs for like 6 hours. So we're feeding on a nutrient dense snack, and then lunch and after school snack to many of the kids. So, so that's the focus of School of Lunch right now is this school and running the school lunch program. And then, of course, like I said earlier, we do training academies where we train lunch leaders. The mission is really to train lunch leaders to sweep across the nation and disrupt the trend of chronic illness in this next generation of kids. So we've trained several people, and from working in a YMCA to working in daycares to an inner city school in Chicago, all sorts of wonderful people have come and learned this ancestral wisdom really and traditional methods of cooking.
You work with kids a lot and feed kids a lot. Do you think kids get like stereotyped as being picky eaters that'll only eat chicken nuggets and stuff? Because I know that
Mm.
when my brothers and I were small, everything you were talking about in your lunch program, we would have been like, right on, we'll eat that. Do you think kids get kind of shortchanged in being seen of as like these picky eaters that only eat McNuggets?
I do. And I think that's a great question, because we were typically feeding, we're in our 5th year of working at this school in California, and we were feeding ages 4th grade through 12th grade. And now this year we're feeding K through 12. And it was so interesting to see these little, 5-year-olds coming through the line and, a little bit weary of what all this was. It wasn't the typical pizza or chicken nuggets. And then the teachers sort of worrying like, oh, they're not going to eat enough and they're going to be starving. And I said, honestly, just give me 2 weeks and this will become normal. And so sure enough, you have to, that's the beauty of the job of a lunch leader, is that you engage with these kids every day after day, and you establish this trust and this rapport, and you make it fun and exciting, and you talk about the color and where it's from and something new and different and the flavors, and making it goofy and silly, and getting them to laugh, and so they start to try new things, and then they're watching their peers and they're watching their teachers and they're watching the older kids try things, and it just becomes the norm. So it really is it's not a long time to create that shift where this becomes what's normal instead of the chicken nuggets and but there are, of course, always we have a few kids who are still a little bit picky, but you really just, I think it's again that creating that trust so that they know you're always looking out for them and they always have something to eat, but you're not going to just pull out the chicken nuggets as your backup. You're going to pull out, the roast beef that we made, or whatever it is, that something that is still real food and nutrient dense. And so, but always encouraging them to try new things. So
I was reading
yeah.
somebody saying that, I can't remember who it was, but they're saying that we're the only country that has kids food and adult food, and like it's ridiculous because we segregate our food to make kids stuff, and like everybody else is like, what are you doing? Like,
Yeah,
this is dumb.
It's so true. And it's so fascinating that you say that, because literally we just ran a retreat for adults in North Carolina. And when we run our training academies, when I have company, when we do events, I make sure to stress to people, I'm like, this is a typical school lunch. So the way that I feed my family, the way that I feed company, the way that we train people when we run retreats, it's all the same. It's just real food, and it's prepared simply and properly. We make sure to properly prepare our grains. We're making homemade, beautiful, long ferment sourdough bread with freshly, local grains that are freshly milled here in Los Angeles or wherever we are. But nothing's different. So exactly to your point, it's all just real food. And so we have to get away from the kid food thing and the kids menus and all that, and just present them with, everything that we're eating, because that's how they learn, and you have to model. And as difficult as it is, it's almost like we're at the point where you just have to rip the Band-Aid off and stop the madness, right?
Yeah. No. What do you think some of the biggest obstacles we face when it comes to feeding our kids and their health? What do you see a lot of issues in that regard?
I think one of the biggest obstacles is that, well, we've become removed from our local food system and the connection to farmers and food in general.
Absolutely.
But also this massive overwhelm, I think, with all that's going on, especially right now in the world. There's so many factors that we're all juggling on a daily basis. And then, of course, also many people are struggling with their own health or struggling with already poor health in their children, which is completely overwhelming and time consuming and stressful. So I think people are overwhelmed. And also one of my biggest epiphanies is that because I've been there, that the responsibility of nourishing the family is typically falling on the shoulders of one. And it used to be that it was a family affair, that,
Yeah.
The mother and the father had a role to play in nourishing the family. It was something that was valued and prioritized and discussed. The kids had roles, and it was really important. And then, of course, that time spent around the family table was cherished, and we're very removed from that. People are running to sporting events and this and that. And so I've really, even just very recently in the last several months, even stepped way back from social media and promoting what I'm doing, just because I find I've had to reflect myself in my own overwhelm of trying to be a full-time working mom and feed my family and manage 5 teenagers, and that what's most important is what's right in front of me. And if I can't take care of myself and my immediate family, then what am I doing trying to change the whole world, right? So it's about kind of, I think, trimming back a little bit and focusing on regrouping and taking a deep breath and prioritizing the health and wellness of the family, whatever path that may be. Because at this point, we have 54% of our kids with a chronic illness. And, we're just kind of headed in this direction where we're going to be caretakers forever if we're not careful. And so I see it, and so many kids in their teens and 20s are struggling with IBS and anxiety, depression, and it's hard. And you just, at that age, you just want to be able to be living your life and having fun and pursuing your dreams. And instead you're trying to manage symptoms that you don't really know how to navigate. And nobody has a clear answer for you, because of course, everyone's so different. And that's where we could get into a little bit of like the microbiome and the cookbook that I wrote, and the importance of understanding how we have to learn to nourish ourselves properly so that we can live free of disease, and then empower this next generation and give birth to a healthier next generation. So
you touched on something about, like, I feel like even television and commercials are playing to this, but the idea of we're like, oh, so busy. So many single parents, like I was a single parent until I got married to my
I've been
wife.
there.
And you're getting off work, you're going to get the kid, you're going to the sporting event. You have very little time to prepare food or a nutritious dinner. And everybody's like, oh, we got you covered. We got this thing you can get fast food, or people are doing Grubhub, etc. Do you think that's an issue today? Like, I think even teenagers are like getting their own food through like these services and stuff too, aren't they?
Yeah. And I have 5 teenagers. So it's like, really, I keep hammering them, like, you guys, my boyfriend just said to my son, like, well, the pizza that you got isn't really food. And my son's like, what do you mean it's not food? It's food. Of course it's food. And he's like, yeah, but just think of the processing and the flour that, what it's so highly processed that your body actually isn't really accepting it as nourishment. I don't believe. I think it has to work really hard to process it and digest it. So
Yeah.
I do think people are relying way too much on outsourcing their health. I mean, every time you purchase something that isn't homemade, you're outsourcing your health, and you're giving somebody else agency over your body. And what we don't understand is that there are all sorts of like hidden ingredients and agendas, and that's why, like, my number one bit of advice is to buy what you can afford and cook real food. Like, learn to cook, decide to step into the work, get in your kitchen and just start, like, wherever it may be, whether it's you're going to crack 2 eggs in a pan and learn how to cook fried eggs and slice some tomato with it, or avocado, whatever, that's it. But start, because the processed rancid vegetable oils and the sugar that's included in it, everything, and not to mention the high fructose corn syrup and the food dyes and the fillers and the stabilizers and the bad salts, and even the most fanciest of restaurants are often using canola oil or soybean oil. And so there's corners that are cut at every level. And so the best thing you can do for your health, I think, is to just keep it simple and cook at home. And if you can instill that in your kids from the earliest age possible, then hopefully you can prevent, or at least set them up with a foundation of the knowledge of how to cook or being comfortable in the kitchen. With these kids at school, I hope that at least they'll have that sense of that feeling of satiety and what it feels like to feel good, and not be on this roller coaster of, highs and lows all day long, and trying to manage when they don't really know exactly what's happening in their bodies, right? So I really can't stress enough the importance of controlling your intake and your ingredients yourself. It's liberating when you can figure it out. And that's why we train people. We've really, and we have to actually, there's no shame, there's no blame, and there's no judgment, because we're at a time, where in humanity, where we've lost that connection from our ancestors. It's not, this information, this knowledge is no longer being passed down from generation to generation. And so what I say is we have to become, I feel like my generation, we have to become the ancestors in training and decide to step into the work and relearn what was once a given. You were just in the kitchen with your parents or whatever, and learning how to survive and how to nourish yourself. And now we have to kind of step in and relearn, and then make a priority, or set a priority to really pass this on. Because if you don't make it a priority, you can't expect your kids to make it a priority, or to even know how to navigate the system.
I wanted to ask you, I was doing some research, and I saw something referring to the regen living lifestyle. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. So I feel like food is foundational for sure, but it's not everything, right? So community and movement and sunshine and good water, laughter, all these things that make us human, are so important. And you can have the healthiest diet in the whole world and be super rigid about it, but you can hate your job or be in a miserable relationship, and you can still get sick. And like I said at the beginning, I think stress is a huge factor. And we have a lot of emotional stress with divorce. I've been through a divorce, or managing, my ex-husband had cancer, and so managing a disease. I have a daughter who also has epilepsy, and so and then my son who had the eczema. It's stressful. So to keep in mind that you have to find this balance of lifestyle. There's a doctor in San Diego named Dr. Cassie Huckabee, and she said, your lifestyle is your medicine. And that just was perfect when she said that. I just thought that's so true, right? So there's all different aspects. And so I'm really learning, as a 47-year-old mom of 5 who's been through the grind of doing it all, and trying to change the world and start a business and do this, that there's no badge of honor at the end of the day. And so you have to take care of yourself, and you have to really value that quiet time and a little bit of time in the sunshine, and the movement for sure. And then friendships. We're so isolated, we're all just behind computers. And especially I see that with my kids who have been on, they're finally back at school, but the Zoom school during the pandemic was just torture. And now they're even more focused on screen time and the screen life and the multitasking on the screens. And it's this whole other addiction. As parents, we now have to manage that, and not just trying to get them to eat well. And so there's so much that you can only do so much, right? So you have to be very gentle with yourself. And I think the regen living is a reminder that there's several facets to what makes up a healthy experience as a human, right?
Well, let me ask you this, because I think this ties in with what you're talking about. When I met my wife and we combined our families, one of the things I noticed immediately was when we made dinner, the kids would grab the plates and start walking towards their bedrooms. And I'm like, what are you doing? We have a table, sit at it. And they're like, they were confused. And she admitted she never had ever made them eat the dinner table. They always got to eat in front of their computers and play video games. And I'm like, no, that stops now. And it was really hard to get the kids to stop that. Now it's normal, but it's taken 7 years. And I think that's normal for a lot of kids. I don't think that our kids are unique in that regard, that they have the same as a lot of kids probably they went to school with. Do you think that's part of it, like the sitting down and consciously being together at a meal.
Absolutely.
Food's not
Yeah.
everything, but it is a time to share, right?
Yeah. So even no matter how imperfect you feel like your homemade dinner is, just sit down. I mean, even if you start with buying something and you start to sit down together, I think it's so critical. That's where, that's where so much happens. I mean, my gosh, I've said so many times that it isn't always pretty or relaxing, but we're all together and we're all, like there can be fights or there can be tears. There can be a ton of laughter. Kids can be standing up and sitting down. I mean, it can be crazy and hectic, but if it's consistent, then that's what they will remember. And that's where a lot of, you decompress from the day. How was your day? What happened? I say, I don't remember one conversation I really had growing up as a kid around the family dinner table. But what I do remember is that we always sat around the family dinner table and had dinner.
Yeah.
So there's that feeling. It's a feeling of that expectation that there will be this gathering or there will be nourishment, and there may be whatever your favorite meal, it may be something that you don't like or whatever it is, but it's a consistent expectation or something that the kids can count on. And I think it's a really important time to just prioritize. And also, I think we need to get back to the gratitude of having what we have and the fact that we have nourishment. And again, like this is what I was saying, we're disconnected from our food and its sources, or whether it be animals or vegetables, there's a lot of hard work and effort that goes into growing food and raising animals. And with animals, something lost its life for our nourishment, and to have reverence for that and to bring that back. A lot of times, in our history, it was like you sacrificed the lamb or a cow or a pig, and that was part of the ritual, or that was just a way of life, and that was something that everybody's had experience around, instead of just going and getting boneless, skinless chicken breasts off the grocery store shelves. You saw that there was something that was alive that now isn't, that is now on your plate and is nourishing you. And also, it's very important to understand that death is a part of life, no matter whether I think a lot of people are so confused with how to eat, and a lot of kids are trying to do what's best for the environment, or they don't want to have a loss of life for their nourishment. But whether you're a vegan or a vegetarian or an animal eater or paleo, keto, whatever you are, you can't get out unscathed, right? There's life that's lost from all agriculture. So as soon as we can sort of embrace that and step into the gratitude of the whole process of everything, and then support those farmers that are really walking the walk and really have such high standards and integrity around the way that they tend to the soil and the animals and the land, and raising healthy food for us. So this, again, those are points that parents can start to integrate into conversations, and it doesn't have to be hammering them over the head with it, but just sort of that again, that reverence and that time and the joy that comes with joy and gratitude, I guess, that come with it.
Now, I want to ask about the first school lunch initiative that you were a part of, and you were a lunch leader training academy.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us about that?
Well, the Lunch Leader Training Academy, the first one we did was pre-pandemic. So we had people come in from all over the country, and it's a 1-week intensive where we stayed in Topanga. So we're immersed in the mountains of California, right? 15 minutes from the beach, but in these big, huge canyons and beautiful nature setting. And we connect as a group, and we not only learn about traditional methods of cooking and ancestral wisdom, but we take a trip to the farmers market in Santa Monica, which is probably one of the best, if not the best in the country. So we have a way to show people really how we engage with our local food system and how responsive farmers are, especially when they understand things are for the children, but they are such incredible people and so knowledgeable. So we make sure that they understand, how you navigate a farmer's market, what questions you ask, how farmers are just such a wealth of information and able to share recipes and preparation techniques of meats and beans and whatever they grow. They're the best at cooking it up. So you want to be sure to ask them what to do. So we go there. We also spend 2 days at a farm in Malibu where we really focus on cooking, and we put our guests to the test, the people that have attended the training academy, and we get our hands dirty and making everything from chicken liver pate to slow roasting meats. We believe you honor the animal by using the whole animal. So we use cuts that aren't necessarily, we're not serving up steaks at school. So we're getting a pork shoulder or a chuck roll, and we're slow roasting them and able to stretch things, out and not be cooking, especially if people are cooking at home too. That's something that they can take with them, where if you're overwhelmed with how to feed a family, something like a pork shoulder or a chuck roll is something you can cook once and have several meals, and you can freeze stuff as well. So we do that. And we bring in guests. We have Organic Pastures. Raw Farm by Organic Pastures is the raw dairy. It's the largest raw dairy in the country, and they come and they give a whole talk about raw dairy. We have our beautiful milling company, Kristen Toll. They come and speak about, they're amazing. They're in Pasadena, and they come and do a whole presentation about the difference in grains and how they find these amazing people doing things right. We've had, I'm trying to think, we have our ghee, our ghee guy has come to school, Sandeep from Pure Indian Foods Ghee. So we bring in, we have had Carla from Jovial came to school. So we have all these connections with not only local farmers, but food purveyors from all over who are doing great things. Redmond Real Salt. We have a bunch of people that send products so we can expose people to, again, these companies that are doing great things. And so it's really about connecting with one another, supporting one another. I think right now people feel isolated and alone and confused and overwhelmed with information. And there's so many there's so much advice, right? And different things. And really what I want to do, when my cookbook first came out, I had just moved to California, and it was like this beautiful melting pot with people from all over the world. And I focused on the elders that I would meet, because they would say, gosh, this is the way we ate growing up and we were never sick. And so I would interview whomever I could from around the world and find out about the way they grew up and the way they were nourished. And one of my French elders, she was about 92, her name was Rose, and she said to me, Hilary, simplicity is gourmet. And that has stuck with me. And I tell people that almost every day, to just, to keep it very simple. And when you have local, seasonal, farm fresh foods, you don't need to do much of anything to them to prepare them. So you don't have to have this expectation for yourself to be the next Martha Stewart or the next Food Network chef, or creating these photo worthy dinners or whatever. You can keep it very simple. And so we aim to teach people at the training academy how to kind of set up the systems in your home or your business, where you can sort of, it's like your kitchen rhythms, where you could say roast a chicken on Sunday night, and then you're eating that chicken, but then you're saving the bones and turning it into a bone broth. And then you're making a soup later on in the week. And you've got your chuck roll that's going to be, or your pork shoulder is going to be tacos one night, and then you're going to have pulled pork barbecue sandwiches the other night, or however you can, get the most bang for your buck, the most nutrient density. At school, we're in no waste kitchens, so we teach people how to save their scraps for the bone broth, their veggie scraps, whatever. And we really just, once you get in the rhythm of it again, then pulling in the whole family. So perhaps like Chuck, my business partner, also my boyfriend, we live together. He might pull a chuck roll out of the freezer and say, I'm going to salt this today so we can have it for dinner
Right.
tomorrow and several
Yeah.
nights. But that communication is so huge, because how many moms have been like 5 o'clock, like, oh, I forgot to pull the thing out of the freezer and I don't know what we're going to have for dinner. And let's just get a pizza because it's easy.
Yeah.
So we really try and demystify it all for people and give them those rhythms and the systems that they need to make it easier on themselves.
Well, I think it's important what you're saying, because a lot of people, if they haven't gone through that themselves, I think it takes years of cooking to get that rhythm going. And if you have advice, because a lot of us don't have parents to teach us how to cook anymore. And I mean, some people do, but not everybody does, or a grandmother or something. So these tips, I think, are really golden, because without them, it's chaos,
Right. And that's why I think, like, if we can decide to become lunch leaders, or like I said, ancestors in training, then we'll bring that back. And we bring back, there's so much, I almost can't put it into words, how much liberation and joy comes from knowing how to navigate your kitchen once again. And it's very meditative and it's very therapeutic to be able to nourish your family and to know that you're doing something really good for them. And because it's not easy to be a parent. And I mean, around every corner, we're like, shoot, just screwing them up on every level, like, so there's so much that we can criticize ourselves about, but it's like, again, that's where we have to just let go of all of that narrative and start fresh and say, this is going to be something that I want to do, because we're kind of headed on this, it's like the train's kind of left the station and we're headed down this bad path of ill health. And it's like, once you, like, with my ex-husband having cancer, it's like I say, my $1 million question is, how do you wake people up before the wake-up call, right? Like most people, but what I'm realizing, I think it maybe is human to wait for the wake-up call.
Yeah.
Like you have to get that frying pan to the head to be like, oh shoot, now I have cancer, or now I have diabetes, like I have to change something. And then you're like willing to do it because you're like, otherwise the alternative is 6 feet under or whatever. So it's about, that stepping into the work before you have to, and making it a joyful experience, because once you have to, you're either beholden to the medical system, like, with my baby with eczema, and the solutions are the solutions that they have, and that's it. And then if you go the alternative route, you're kind of on your own, and nobody is really supporting you, cheerleading you, say, yeah, go that way. It's like, why aren't you going the other way? You're going to die. And so there's all this fear around it. And so you're kind of navigating by yourself, and nothing's covered by insurance. So you spend all your time and all your money chasing health. And it's not really fun to live that way.
Yeah.
So I've been through that. And that's why I feel like I am so passionate about waking people up and inspiring them to just get excited about this. And these little kids to, often I say we're teaching, this is like a bottom up approach, because the kids get these lessons at school and they try these foods. And then I get an email from a parent like, well, can I try your sourdough bread? Or my kid likes that Romanesco. How do you prepare that? Or what is Romanesco? And, so it's like the kids start talking. And then before the pandemic, we were able to have parents come to the school. We had parents at lunch once a month. So they were able to experience the way we're feeding everybody. And we bring farmers in and have these big sort of celebrations of our local food system. So hopefully we can do that again soon, but
I love that.
It's a beautiful thing. Yeah.
Now, I want to talk about your cookbook, the Heal Your Gut Cookbook. It's nutrient-dense recipes for intestinal health using the GAPS diet. At what point did you think, I really need to write this down into a cookbook? What took you there to that point?
Well, so after I went to the Institute for Integrative Nutrition and started teaching cooking classes out of my home, and I had healed my son of eczema, we have a daughter who has epilepsy. So I was always on this sort of path of like, how can we help her? And maybe we could heal her epilepsy. And I had heard Dr. Natasha Campbell McBride, who's the founder of the GAPS diet, which stands for the gut and psychology syndrome and the gut and physiology syndrome. So the gut brain connection, the gut body connection. I had heard her speak at the Weston Price Foundation conferences and was really fascinated with her work. And I had a medical intuitive say to us that my whole family needed the GAPS diet. And I was like, oh, geez. And I knew it was this long, potentially long 2-year protocol of healing and sealing your gut. And it seemed sort of daunting, but we actually just kind of like that, let's do it. And we ventured right into it. My husband and I did it for a month. And then when the kids started their school vacation, we just basically like started them on this healing protocol where it's like, it was soup, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So as I was teaching classes out of my home, I started morphing things into more of the GAPS principles, and which is very similar to Weston Price, but I was talking about it. And there was a woman in my cooking class who was also on the GAPS diet, and she is a photographer, Mary Brackett, and she said we should write a cookbook about this, because both of us were a little bit like overwhelmed by this protocol. There wasn't really, this is pre-food bloggers kind of thing, and so there wasn't really much out there in terms of inspiration. She had this amazing book that was very descriptive and you understood the why, but that inspiring, beautiful looking food just wasn't in front of me where I could see what to do. And that, step-by-step protocol wasn't really easily laid out for me to follow. So we embarked on kind of creating this beautiful book that somebody or a parent could curl up in bed and open up and see that they could eat beautiful, nutritious, delicious foods and still heal while doing so. So that's how the cookbook came about.
Can you talk about the layout of the cookbook? Because it's unique, right?
Yeah.
There's a specific process to it.
Yeah. So there's the intro to GAPS, which is a 6-stage elimination diet, healing protocol that if you've really got something, a diagnosis or something that you've got to kind of dig deep to try and get to the bottom of, you might want to start at stage 1 GAPS, which again, like we did. And that's like where you're having meat stocks and bone broths, and you're very slowly adding things back in so that if something reacts, that you kind of move forward or backwards depending on how your body reacts, and you have a chance to really reset and get to a point of like a ground zero where you can kind of, as you add back in, whether you can move forward or you have to kind of hold for a little while. But then as soon as you get through that, it's like 3 to 5 days per stage. And then when you get through that, you enter into the full GAPS diet, which is much like a paleo. There's no grains or legumes, but we did have raw dairy and fermented raw dairy, especially raw kefir and sour cream and stuff. So that is not super challenging for many people to follow. And I say the hardest part of doing it is deciding to do it. And I think that's like where you have to kind of flip your switch. But once you decide and once you go through it, not everybody has to do it for 2 years. Some people do just the full GAPS diet and have a lot of healing just through that alone. And again, it's just really, it's the basis of how we cook at the school. It's the basis of how I cook at home, how I cook for family and friends and training and stuff like that. So it's nothing super complicated. And once you've kind of healed yourself, you look back and it's like, wow, that was a blip in my life. It can seem overwhelming to think, oh, I have to eliminate this for 6 months, or I have to do this. But in the grand scheme of things, to have then a lifetime of flexibility and joy and health it's worth it, right? So I just encourage people to not be too fearful of stepping into the work again, because otherwise you can spend your life trying to figure out your gut forever, because so many people just don't, and there's so many different layers of disease and there's so many different reactions that people have, because we're all like snowflakes, right? We can't say that what works for you is going to work for me. So it is a challenge in today's world, because yes, you have to maybe give up some of your vices for a little while. But then once you see, like a lot of people have sugar cravings and addictions in, to sugar mostly, I would say. But once you cut that and you increase your healthy fats and your satiety, then you don't have those cravings anymore. And it's like, maybe 15 days. It's not like it's going to take 2 years. Your body is always constantly adapting and adjusting and trying to be in homeostasis. So when you give it what it really needs, I say we're overfed typically and undernourished. So when you actually finally give your body that proper nourishment, it responds to that and you feel it. So you want to keep going because you feel better.
What has been some of the response or the feedback you've gotten from people that tried the GAPS diet?
Oh, I've had so many amazing emails and letters from people across the world just saying they're so grateful to have had kind of this roadmap to what we created with the easy layout. And I thank Mary for that. That's the way my co-author, her brain thinks. She's very visually, and I'm a visual learner, so the way that the book was laid out was super helpful, I think, to a lot of people, and made it very simple. And the idea is too that it's nothing complicated. I don't like to look at a recipe and have like 30 ingredients. I'm not a trained chef, and so everything in there is pretty simple. It's like I taught myself how to cook, and now I basically learn by doing, and I keep learning every day. And even in the kitchen, like I have some amazing chefs that come in and out of our kitchen. One of my chefs right now is from Iran, so it's like, gosh, the flavors and the different techniques and styles that she brings into the kitchen is so awesome. So it's sort of like a very creative outlet for a lot of people. I used to paint furniture for a living, and I gave that all up when I had my kids, and then the kitchen sort of became my creative space. So it brings a lot from creative expression to meditation and peace and quiet. And sometimes you might have kids everywhere, but also joy, like getting your kids up on the counter cracking eggs or watching what you're doing from 2 years old or whatever is the way to go. So yeah, anyway, I could go on and on about that.
I wanted to ask you too, in my research, I saw something, a lifestyle brand, Live Yum Yum. Can we talk about that?
Oh, Live Yum Yum. That was before School of Lunch. So we transitioned our brand from Live Yum Yum to School of Lunch.
Okay.
So yeah, so it's basically the same thing, but School of Lunch. We had an opportunity to work with an amazing guy who, John Bielenberg, who has a company called Think Wrong. And we got to go to Kansas University, and his students that he was teaching rebranded us. So we had this fun experience of establishing or creating School of Lunch together. So you can it's funny too, because you can look at it SOL as shit out of luck, or or get schooled, or soul and the heart in the middle. So it's a great brand. It's really it's got a lot of depth to it. And so we always say, you don't want to be SOL, we'd rather have you get schooled and go to School of Lunch and learn the tricks of the trade. But what I can say too about School of Lunch that I think sets us apart is, actually, I don't know too many people that are doing what we're doing, but it's such a heart-centered brand. And it is funny that there's the heart in the middle of the SOL, because none of this is ego-driven or anything. I mean, I say to my chefs at the school kitchen, check your ego at the door. My friend, Matt Boudreau, told me one time, mission is the boss. He's an educator as well. And I thought that's so true. And so I said, check your ego at the door. Mission is the boss. Feeding this next generation of kids and this community is everything. And so we really are this very passionate, heart-centered, mission-driven group of people that just see the joy that comes with that awakening of, wow, I can do this, and this is amazing. And when you meet your local farmers and when you connect with them, the gratitude that they have for you, your support, and then the reciprocal gratitude is so amazing. And so it's just a really incredible opportunity and job that I'm thankful for every day, and that I get to share this knowledge with people and to really change people's outlooks and give them hope that they don't have to be beholden to a diagnosis or the medical system, that you have so much agency over your health when you decide to own it, right? And to own it, you don't have to be alone in that process. We say, we train people, but then we're basically your forever community. We're your soul fam, where we will be here, and we're here to answer questions and connect you, to whomever we can that would help you on your journey towards health.
This episode of the Well Seasoned Librarian Podcast is sponsored by the Culinary Historians of Northern California, a Bay Area educational group dedicated to the study of food, drink, and culture in human history. To learn more about this organization and their work, please visit the website at www.chnorcal.org. You touch the lives of a lot of people and a lot of kids. What's the best feedback you've gotten from a kid about the work you do?
Oh my gosh. Well, Joel, our third business partner, he made a 12-minute little mini documentary that's on our School of Lunch webpage. If you click on school, it'll immediately pop up. But there was a little 6th grade boy, and you're not gonna be able to see this on the podcast, but I'll describe it. But I was talking to him, and unprompted, he said, I used to feel like this, up and down. He put his arm up and down all day long. And now I just feel like this. And he did this straight line, straight across. And I was just like, wow, that is incredible, because that means he's gone from a state of, blood glucose fluctuation all day long to a very stable blood glucose level. And we know how key that is, because we've done a citizen science project after this video was made, but we took blood glucose monitors and we put them on our chefs, we put them on kids, we put them on parents, and we put them on staff as an empowerment tool to show how food affects your blood glucose levels. So it was really an accountability tool, and especially for parents and chefs to say, if I am feeding a child food that I know is spiking their blood glucose levels all day long and driving them to a lifetime of being beholden to the medical system or disease, then how can I in good conscience feed that to them? So really, when you see the power of the food that you're feeding the children day after day after day, you know that with every meal that you feed them, that you're giving them another day of good health. And 6 hours a day is a long time to have someone's stomachs, and you can make a huge impact. I thought about that. If we have these lifers that go through K through 12 and have this experience of this food and sitting down together. I mean, they're sitting outside. It's an outdoor school. So they're sitting out under these beautiful oak trees, eating with their classmates and their teachers, and eating all this beautiful farm fresh food. There's no way that that's not going to get into their consciousness and be something that they remember forever. I mean, we've even just yesterday, the little kids come in, these little 1st grade girls have started this dance party in the kitchen after lunch. And it started with 2 kids. And yesterday there were probably about 10 kids, but they're in there and they're dancing and we're dancing. And I was just thinking, like, this is so funny. Like, they're going to look back someday and be like, I was dancing with my lunch lady, like in the kitchen, like how many people are going to say that? But the idea is just to have fun with it and to make, ease the stress and the burden of these little kids having to feel the pressure of the decision making. And just like I say to them, like, everything that we make, we can, remove you from that process. You can trust that we've gone through that decision making process with your best, our intentions are to make you the healthiest, most vibrant version of yourself. And we're growing brains. I tell the kids, like, we're growing brains, you guys. So we have done our due diligence, and we only really source from the best. So it's quite an honor to be able to do that, especially in this day and age.
It sounds wonderful. I have one last question for you. What's next for you?
Well, okay, so my dream has always been to have a hub where I can train. Like I said in the beginning, I can't change a million schools because every school has their own pain points, right? And I've tried in Massachusetts, I tried for almost a decade to change school lunches, and I just felt like I was beating my head against the wall, and there are a lot of roadblocks. So if I can keep training and inspiring lunch leaders, and so if I have this hub where I'm training, and not just training about food, but this lifestyle, this regen living, the nature connection is so important. I mean, I just taught last week, and my biggest epiphany is that if we can recognize that we are nature, right? We're no different than anything in nature. We're a part of it. And so if we were able to unzip ourselves and see all the miracles that are happening every second of every day, and give that same respect that maybe we give to, like, a butterfly that, has emerged out of a cocoon, or a peacock or a bird or a mountaintop, whatever the most beautiful things in nature. If we could shine the mirror on ourselves and have that same respect, just as you wouldn't pour gasoline on your plants and expect them to thrive. Why do we do that to ourselves? So my goal is really to keep training. We have an opportunity potentially to work with a food service company that I think would be absolutely incredible, because they're working with hospitals and schools and elder homes. And that way, like, I think one of the biggest barriers to entry is the food service contracts. These schools and the hospitals are all, they've signed the contract, they're locked in, and they can't change it. And that's where some of the worst food comes from. So if we could set a food service company up with the value system, and then they can lead the way, and then other food service companies are like, hey, they've got, something really cool going on here. And then the clients, the students and the patients and the business people, whomever we're feeding, they're seeing results and they're feeling it. And I just think that would be an incredible way to make an impact. And again, just so it goes back to that training piece. And so my goal is to have a training hub. So a beautiful place where we can really show people how it's done. They can get out of their element, come to us, and just have the experience, really, because we say in 4 or 5 days, we can change your life for life. Once you get it, you get it. And once you learn it, you're not going to unlearn it. You're going to go back into your community fired up and all ready to kind of, change your own little system, whether it be your own health or the health of what's right in front of you. And again, I think that's a really great way to end this, is that is the most important thing, is to be the best version of yourself every day, so that you can model good health. You're not going to be any good to anybody if you're fraying at the seams and then get sick because you're stressed out trying to empower everybody else. So take care of yourself first, then your immediate family, then your community, and let it ripple out.
I love that. I hope this comes to pass for you. I want to thank you for being on the program. And I want to urge our listeners to look up and get the Heal Your Gut Cookbook, nutrient-dense recipes for intestinal health using the GAPS diet. Hilary, thank you for being on the program.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, and there. Thank you. This has been great. I really love your program and all you're doing. This sounds like such a huge 180 from the dystopian school lunches I had when I was a kid.
Yeah, I know. I mean, my boyfriend's sister just said to me in St. Louis, she's like, she works with all special needs kids. And she's like, the kids are saying that the school lunch like bounces off the floor. I'm like, oh God. But she's like, can you come help us? And I'm like the public school system is just, it's like it's doing what it was designed to do. And so unless you can break that food service contract, unless you can appeal to the hearts of the people that are making the decisions, at some point, I would think that people are going to wake up that it's not like, okay, what we're doing, and it doesn't make any sense. And we're really just exacerbating the problem. So we have to figure out a way. And I believe there's enough abundance in this world for us to, if we can spend billions and billions on masks and tests and everything, we can spend billions on a school lunch program.
Absolutely. I mean, we totally can. I think you're part of a revolution that's going on in this country right now. It just seems like with the stuff Alice Waters is doing, what you're doing, I've had other guests on here. I know people that are local that are kind of providing food and vegetables for local school systems and food banks. I think there's something going on in this country where people are saying we've had enough. And nobody likes to see their kid, go to school and eat like something that's artificial, that's not I mean, you remember this stuff when you're older. Many of us that are my age recall our school lunches with horror. There were negative time periods, never positive.
Yeah.
And what you're doing sounds so magical for these kids, something they can remember with fondness later on. That's a hell of a thing. That's
and
big.
they know, I should have talked about this, but the vitamin L, they know that there's love put in the food. They know that there's somebody that's caring for them.
Yeah.
Like when you're serving up shitty food and just, like somebody came to intern at the kitchen and she had just been to a public school and she said they have 15 minutes to get like, forget what it was. It was like 15,000, not 15,000, maybe it was like 5,000 people like through the line. And I'm just like, I can't even get the kindergartners through the line in 15 minutes. Like there's just no time that's taken to care and tend to the decisions that these kids are making. It's just like one bad choice after another. And it's just feeding them to just feed them. And as like my boyfriend said, like the pizza, it really isn't food. It's like a food like substance, you know?
Oh, I mean, yeah. And the stuff we had when I was a kid in the school lunches was just, I don't even know. It was pizza-esque, but not really the same thing.
Right. Yeah. So the kids taste, and that's what I hope about my own kids. They go off to college and they're just like, oh, this doesn't even taste good. You know, like they've had those experiences where they're like there's In-N-Out burger out here. And of course I've never been, but they've gone and they're like,
it's overrated really.
Yeah. They're just like the fries. They went because I was away last week doing a retreat and they went and they're like, we didn't even get the fries. The fries are disgusting. And I've told them like a million times, I'm like, they're cooked in cottonseed oil. Like, don't eat those, you know?
Yeah.
But so they've even figured that out on their own, that they're just gross. So hopefully, and as a mom, I'm just like, oh God, just like, please let them be okay. You know, because you learn as they get older that like, you know, and when I was 18, I was eating fat-free and a bunch of crap and my poor mom, you know, she had to let it go. You have to kind of have your journey. So, but if you can give them the tools that they circle back to, then, and that's what frustrates me about the narrative right now is there just really isn't any narrative about taking control of your health. Again, it's like, get a jab and then that'll save you. And it's like, well, wait a minute. How about let's get healthy, America? Let's like get some sunshine and move your body and eat good food and support local farmers. And there's just no narrative like that.
Well, everything's done in a hurry. I mean, the kids are they're being given something food-like as they get hustled out the door to go to school. Right. Then they rush, like you said, they rush through this like what 20-minute lunch that they have to gobble down as fast as possible and get to their next class. And they're cramming, stressing, going to sports or ballet or whatever. And then they're having to do all this homework and then they go to bed. That's like this, like they're living like cattle. There's no time to stop, reflect, digest. It's just like go, go, go.
Yeah, that's just even the digestion process, you know, like people are eating late at night. So then they're going to bed with a full stomach, then their body can't repair and they're not sleeping well. And then they just be given like a sleeping pill. And it's like the acceptance of all of it is crazy to me that it's just like, oh, okay, that's what I have to, but you know what? I was there. Like I look back, I'm like, how could I have been so naive and so stupid? Like I literally would look through it like, you know, frosted mini wheats and be like, oh, 0 fat. Okay, I can have it. And I eat like a whole box of frosted mini wheats. Like, what was I thinking? But somehow I was thinking that was better for me than.
Well, that was like, what we were told though.
Butter,
that was in the common parlance. We were getting articles and stuff and TV shows.
Yeah.
And that was acceptable.
Advertising and everything, you know? So I'm just like, wow, like I would eat like butter buds and like I don't even know, it's just horrifying. But
I saw something on if you ever look and watch a video on what it takes to make margarine, you'll never eat it again. And I know you don't, but like I've often told people, go watch a video on how they make margarine, just go do it, I'll wait. And then they're like oh, okay. And they're like, because it's horrifying. It's not a food product as I know it.
No. And now I eat like literally a half a stick of butter a day, probably.
Me too.
And feel like so much better. Like I'm probably 20 or more pounds lighter than I was in my, you know, fat-free days. So it's just like, and healthier and happier. And I had like, you know, bad skin back then, like all the things that just go with, you know, a life of self-sabotage, destruction. So we have to make it, you know, but I do see these kids and the parents so confused. And especially with like now the narrative around meat and that you have to give it up to save the environment. And then it's like, these kids have no idea whether, you know, if they're sacrificing their health to save the environment, what's the point? Like you just, and what a privilege to be able to say, oh, I'm just going to give up meat. Like some people in this world, meat is all they have access to, you know, so there's so much that goes into it. But like you said, the narratives are so strong and powerful that, that's why I hope to just ease that burden for them, that whatever we present is ethically, raised and sourced, and they don't have to worry about that.
Yeah, I've raised
So,
animals. It's a huge thing when you do it and you raise something from like a chick to a grown bird that you then kill for food.
mhm.
It's a real, you learn to really respect what you're eating. It
Yeah.
really brings it home for you.
Yeah, I know even my 18-year-old is going off to Navajo Nation in Arizona. They're going to be of service to a small tribe there, and
That's
they're going
wonderful.
to
That's
sacrifice
wonderful.
a sheep. Yeah. And he's like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to be the one. And I was like, well, I'm really happy that you're going to have that experience. And he thinks it's going to be easy. And I said, well, just prepare yourself that you're going to be like, as I think, even he's disconnected to the process of like having to look something in the eye that's alive and say, I'm going to take your life right now to nourish us. And
Yeah.
that's easier to talk about than it is. I mean, even Chuck witnessed it. And when he was talking about it in front of a group where we did a slow food event where we had lamb or maybe it was goats. I think it was goat. And he was crying because it was so moving. And so it's such a, so I don't know. I hope that humanity will wake up. I have hope that these kids will also desire, something better than what,
I think they will.
and they'll push for it,
I think you've really affected a lot of people. I think it's going to have ripples that go out, like a Fibonacci sequence is going out and out.
Yeah, I hope so. And I just have to figure out where, I don't know, California. Are you in California?
Yeah, I'm in the Bay Area. I'm in
Oh,
Emeryville
okay.
near Oakland and Berkeley.
Okay. So I feel like things are getting a little crazy out here, but and expensive. So
Yes.
I don't know if this is the best place to stay. Some days I'm like, we got to get out of here. And then some days I'm like, oh, I love California so much.
Well, I work out here, but I live in San Joaquin Valley. So I have a commute.
Oh, okay.
I live in farm country where there's cattle
Nice.
and
Yeah.
I'm surrounded by farms and all kinds of farms and stuff. So
Oh, that's so nice. Yeah. So, and we have such a great local food system that I want to continue to support that. So,
yeah. Oh yeah. It's
yeah.
really been wonderful
Well,
talking to you. I'm going to let you go, but
yeah.
thank
Thank
you.
you so much. Stay in
I'll,
touch. Reach out if you ever, have ideas or questions or anything. I'm here.
That was my conversation with Hilary Boynton of the Heal Your Gut Cookbook, nutrient-dense recipes for intestinal health using the GAPS diet. I had a great time talking to Hilary, and there's information about the School of Lunch program in the link on bio. On Friday, I welcomed to my program Diane Jacob, who is out the 4th edition of the Will Write for Food book out. If you like food writing or want to be a food writer, this is the ultimate item you can get for yourself. It's actually used as a textbook in most writing programs. She also has an excellent book out called The United States of Pizza, which I really enjoy, and I make pizza every week, and this book really inspired me. Listen to our conversation with Diane on Friday. I hope you all have a great week and enjoy the rest of your week and keep cooking.
I've been getting